and businesses how to transition to more sustainable choices. So please stay with us. We will be right back. Okay, hello everyone. It is Tuesday and we have Seeking Sustainability Live number 64 today with Helene, and I'm not going to attempt your last name. Okay, I'm going to try. Queguiner. Queguiner. Is that fine? Close?
Queguiner.
Okay.
Yes, close.
So we have had, actually, you are the third French guest in this series.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we had Clementine from Mikan. She upcycles kimono. We had Sebastian, who's a travel advisor. And now we have a sustainability consultant. So really nice.
Yeah, it's a good mix.
Yeah, a nice mix. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Wonderful. Would you mind briefly introducing yourself before we start with the questions?
Yeah, no problem. So I'm Hélène. I'm French, as you can guess from my accent. I arrived in Japan in October 2018. And actually, just before arriving in Japan, I was living in UK for 8 years, working in the packaging industry. And when, let's say I had many redundancies at work, and this kind of changed my perspective on, work and the world we live in, and also started to tickle my mind on, the environmental issues. This is all correlated to me. And so from that point, I started questioning, what was my mission in life. And so I took the opportunity of taking the redundancy package, and with my husband, we decided to go traveling and do the Trans-Siberian and use that as a way to go to Japan and discover the culture. So, and during this trip, actually, that was also a tipping point for me because that was the longest trip I've ever done. So it was like 2 months crossing, Russia, Mongolia, China. And I really saw some of the aspects, like the negative aspect of tourism. And, for example, especially in China, where I had been 12 years ago, I was living there for a short while. And I saw the difference in, let's say, the income and the fact that there was a lot of internal tourism, which is good in a way, but also was degrading, some of the beautiful landscapes and very traditional spaces, because it was becoming almost like Disney World in a sense. So I was really shocked by that, and that kind of started my questioning on my lifestyle, my impact and stuff. And so when I arrived in Japan, I said, okay, I need to change the way I live and start my ecological transition. So when I arrived in Japan, I didn't really know Japanese. So I had to start learning, and at the same time trying to find solutions, which was not very easy at first when you don't know the language, I'm sure you know. And so, that's why when the idea came to create Mottainai-Transition, which is, how can I help other people, other foreigners, expatriates, like to change or kind of transfer their lifestyle when they arrive in Japan. Because when you arrive in Japan, there's so much plastics everywhere. You're shocked. You don't know where to go and what to do. So that's how I started my consultancy, basically.
Well, so the shock of being in Japan and seeing the overconsumption kind of spurred you on to try to start a consultancy.
Yeah.
Interesting. So I want to ask about the Trans-Siberian, because I've never done it. I love traveling. I've been all over the world, but I've never done the Trans-Siberian. So you started where, and you took how long? Give us a little overview of the Trans-Siberian. Yeah.
And sorry, I couldn't send you the pictures,
No,
so I don't
that's
have any
okay.
pictures.
That's okay.
Uh,
I have
so
a map here.
okay, cool. So what we started with was Russia, so Moscow. So we cheated a little bit. Actually, if I was to do it again, I would start from France, taking the train, taking my time to go to Russia. So we started in Moscow, we did St. Petersburg, we went to Kazan, which has a very interesting culture because it's close to the southern, like all the Kyrgyzstan, all these kind of countries in terms of the culture. Then we went to Yekaterinburg, and then stopped in close to Lake Baikal, which is amazing. And we went to this island, which is a great place for shamanism. So it's a very interesting experience. And so I would say the trip through Russia took us 1 month, and we could have potentially stopped and taken more time, but usually with visa, you can't go over 1 month. And so some people, they just go through, the full journey in one go. And I think that takes about 10 days, I believe, from Russia to Vladivostok, like from Moscow to Vladivostok or from Moscow to Beijing. We took a bit more time. And so after Russia, we went to Mongolia. We stayed a little bit and explored Mongolia for 10 days. And then we took again the train to go to Beijing and then did a bit of traveling in China. And what I would say is, like, we had some friends that did Trans-Siberian before. And what I would recommend if you guys want to experience this trip is really to go into the third class, because this is where you have all the open compartments, and you really experience, like, people chatting together, playing games, cards. For one part of the trip, we had, like, I think almost 2 days in the train, because going through Siberia, sometimes there's a very long distance between two major cities, and we ended up being with a group of military young guys. And even though we don't speak Russian, with Google Translate, we had a really nice exchange with them, and this is really, like, heartwarming, like, these moments. So I really recommend you to try this. This trip is really life-changing.
Wow, that's awesome. How much did it cost? How much is it? Really expensive?
To be honest with you, it's not that expensive. I don't remember because it was a long time ago. But most of the time, for the nights outside the train, we were staying in couch surfing, so it was free.
Okay.
So you just stay at locals and you have a nice conversation. Sometimes you would cook dinner, or give a little present, in exchange for the time and the hosting.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes you would stay at hostels. So it's not very expensive in Russia, to be honest with you. The trains, one night, usually you have to count around 50 euros per night in terms of equivalent. So if you count a number of days, and I think it's around that. Maybe sometimes it's a bit more, let's say 50 to 100 euro per day.
Mm-hmm. Oh, 50 to 100 euros a day. So how much would that be in yen?
Ichiman gura, ichiman.
So very reasonable.
Maybe I'm wrong. Sorry, I'm not very good with the number of zeros.
So not too expensive, quite reasonable. And that was such a big contrast to then being in Japan, taking the Japanese bullet train, Shinkansen. I'm sure the trains are very different, right?
Completely. Yeah, and also, like, when you take the Trans-Siberian, there's different trains. There's like old style trains and more recent ones. So some have very little air conditioning. So it's quite interesting. And it's not the same pace as Japan Shinkansen. Yes. Yeah. And what is nice is just you take the time to slow down. You just look outside. You see it's almost like you see almost always the same, landscapes, but slowly it's changing. When you go through Siberia, little by little, you see the landscape changing. You just read, relax, and then, sometimes talk to people, share a meal as well. So people tend to share stuff as well on the train. Like it's very,
That's
very
really
kind.
nice.
Yes.
That's something that maybe would work well in Japan, I think. If they had dining car and people could go and talk to each other while they have some food or drink. Like have more of the European train experience on the Japanese Shinkansen. Because sometimes you can be on the Shinkansen for 5 hours. That's a long
That's true.
time, right? So why not have one car where people can go and talk and be more loud or friendly, I think that's a great idea. Let's
Yeah.
suggest that might be an innovation for Japanese train travel. Let's talk about your London experience a little bit in
Yes.
packaging consultancy for eco-friendly packaging. So you talked about in London you were working in the package industry. Can you give us a background?
Yes, so I was working for big companies like Procter and Gamble and Coty, which is famous in the cosmetics industry. So I was particularly working on the Gucci brand, so looking after their cosmetics line in terms of the packaging development. So my job was basically taking the requirements from the designers and the marketing to find the right materials at the right cost, slightly adapt the design depending on the technical constraints, and look obviously at the cost and the quality and such. So that was like, I really liked my job because I like art, and working in the cosmetics industry in the luxury category, it's very, you work with beautiful products, and you have nice technologies, and it's not just about like having the cheapest cost possible. So I really enjoyed my work, and I was also doing a bit of innovation work on the side. So I really loved that time. But at the end, we got bought, and you see a change in culture in the company, and also you see sometimes the waste that you have, like when you are making a new product, a new line, and there's so much money spent in making prototypes and doing trials, and a lot of waste and things which just end up in the bin. And that was starting to really affect me, unconsciously, I think, at very first. But and so that's kind of how I started to question, my willingness to continue in that space.
That's so interesting. We had another packaging company person, Cohen Kasufumi Wang, and he's running a packaging company which is trying to replace the bento boxes from the plastic to the wooden bento
Mm-hmm.
boxes. So it's more environmentally friendly because it is burnable or biodegradable. Did you find the same kind of targets? Like in packaging, a more sustainable package you might suggest would be plant-based, so paper or wooden, or is it what that change from plastic must be so difficult for companies because everything is made in easy shapes. It's a wonderful material, but it has a horrible impact, right?
That's true. And so for me, I was working a lot actually in perfumery. So we work a lot with glass and also plastic, obviously, metal and stuff. And the constraints I saw is more like when you're working with fashion houses, they have a very clear vision on what they want for the design. And sometimes when you work with more sustainable materials, so for example, I have an option in mind, an example in mind. There's a type of glass that is made of, I think it was 90% of recycled glass. So it's, new glass, let's say new material mixed with recycled glass. And there's a very, very consumer not noticeable green, let's say, reflection in this glass. And even, I remember there was one fashion house that was uh, with a more eco-friendly philosophy, and still, this was not working for their design vision. It was, they're very, very picky. Like the littlest detail matters to them. So sometimes it's very hard to change. And especially because I was working for a company that was a licensee. Yes. So you don't have the same relationship with the fashion house. When you are a company that has everything in-house, I think about Chanel, for example. I think in the recent years, they've tried to incorporate some element of sustainability within their products. I think, for example, they've launched a fragrance, I forgot the name, but the glass is very, very thin. So it means less weight, less material. So it's kind of reducing the footprint. Maybe there's a bit of marketing into that, but there's also, a shift in the mindset. And also fundamentally, something that was starting to affect me is the fact that I was working for an industry that's not very essential. And so almost started to feel to me that we are wasting resources, marketing products to people which are not essential. And, I would rather these resources be used for food or basic hygiene or things which are really important. So that's also something that was disturbing me.
Yeah, no, that's a really good reason to change what you're doing when you start feeling so conflicted and
Yes.
you feel like there must be a better way. I'm going to go find it.
Yes.
I did some research in Kamikatsu, the zero waste town, a few times, and I had a chance to talk with Akira Sakano, who's the head of the Zero Waste Academy. And she told me the Zero Waste Academy is often in collaboration or in communication with businesses. And they tell the business, listen, this product that you've designed has mixed material, and
Yes.
mixed material is impossible to recycle. So
Right.
I see that all the time, right? Like you have a glass bottle, you have a plastic cap, and it's really hard to get that plastic cap off, but you have to recycle them separately. And
Yes.
so she said part of their job is to try to educate the company, but the company says, oh, that's the designer. The designer wants to do it that way. But then once they communicate to the designer, then the boss says, oh, okay, let's not do it that way, right? But
Yes.
it's like one department's not communicating with another department, and the designer has a nice design, but they're not thinking about what happens after the product, right?
Yes. Completely.
So, hopefully it's changing, but that's a big issue, right? Mixed material.
I think you're right. And the problem is today we are designing products for the use, but we are not thinking of the life cycle of the products. Like even before, like the raw materials, what happens or what raw materials we are using. We just take whatever. We don't really think, further. And then the end life, it's even worse. Like we just say, okay, I don't care,
Yeah.
this is not my problem.
It is so important to think about the circle, right? Like, where does it come from? Where
Yes.
does it end? Can we reuse it, right? Like, Mayu Seto is a peace activist who I talked with last week. And she went to the uranium mines in Australia when she was visiting Australia because she's anti-nuclear. She wanted to meet the activists who are against the uranium. That's part of the nuclear process. You can't just look at nuclear when it's making energy and not before, not be after, right? You have to, for every service, every product, you have to think, well, what came before? What comes after?
Exactly. I agree with you.
We are on the same page.
Yes.
Same page. So on your website, let's talk about your website a little bit. You have different sections connected to your coaching, and one of them is positivity. Talk to me about positivity a little bit.
Yes. So for me, when I do my ecological transition coaching, it's very important to have a very positive mindset and to celebrate the little steps, Because for me, when I was going through my journey, and even before, I'm a very late bloomer in terms of ecology awareness, I would say. I didn't grow up in this environment. I was not really aware or questioning things until very, very recently. And sometimes I felt that the message was not getting through me because of the way it was communicated. It was too, for me, it was too anxiety, maybe provoking, or I was feeling guilty when I was reading these messages. So I want to try to help people on their journey and encourage them to go to every steps, and celebrate that, and not feel, okay, you're not doing enough. So yeah, that's my philosophy.
And health and well-being is another one of your points.
Yes. So for me, this is all linked. Like when you look at the environment, and taking care of the environment is actually taking care of your own health and your mental, physical health, and also well-being, mental health. So like this is all linked. So we should be maybe selfish and taking care of the earth for our own good. I mean, so once you understand that, I think it's easier maybe to act, because you understand that it's actually you're doing, good for yourself. So that's why I try to use that element to trigger people, because I think this is an easier way to relate to the issue.
Yeah, definitely. And when you make better choices, I think you feel less guilty about life, because our lives are so convenient and so wasteful. But
Yes.
when you make the better choice, you feel better. You can relax more, right? So
I agree.
I love that. Let's talk about another one, empathy.
Empathy. So yes, so I use this. This is a value that is important to me as well, because I try to design my workshops and my coaching sessions using a methodology I was using when I was doing innovation, which is called design thinking. So you really try to understand the user before finding a solution. So this is really what I try to do. Not every solution works for everyone. And it doesn't work, for example, it might work for you in a certain number of time after you've been through a certain phase, but let's find the right solution for you at that moment. Let's implement that solution for your lifestyle. And once it's implemented and you want to go further, let's continue on the journey. So it's really like understanding what the personal context is. For example, if it's a full-time mom, you may not be able to go every day to, I'm making things up, but you buy your tofu fresh from the tofu. Yeah, maybe you can find tips to try to still have your fresh tofu, but there's things you can try to implement. Or, for example, doing washable nappies. Maybe 100% washable nappies is not a good solution for you. Maybe you can do during the day, at the nursery, let's say disposable nappies, and then at home you can try to have washable. So trying to find things that work for the person.
I think that's so important. And I talked to Katie O'Brien from Eco de Eco about this, that you have to live your life,
Yes.
You can't be too stressed about everything. If you have a better choice, you make a better choice if it works for you. If it doesn't work for you, just think about it and try it next time, right?
Exactly.
I think you also say on your website, I try really hard not to be judgmental, right?
Yes.
Like don't judge other people, because you don't know what kind of difficulty they're having with some change. It doesn't work for them, maybe. So
Yes.
just try to talk about it and be supportive and try not to be judgmental. It's so hard. I understand that, but it doesn't help anybody to be judgmental, right?
No. And you're right. You're right. Like on the journey, if you're feeling stressed or anxious, it's not helping you. And at some point you will be burning down. So that's why again we go back to the well-being, your mental well-being. You have to take care of that, as well. So keep the positivity and and the movement.
Yeah. I have met so many people, and I'm trying really hard to be a vegan. My son and I are trying to be as strict as possible. Sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes you have to have something with fish in. Sometimes you have to have something with dairy in. It's hard in Japan, right?
It is, yes.
But we're trying, and I keep meeting people who are like, "Oh, I used to be a vegetarian before I came to Japan. It's too hard." I gave up. And I was like, well, don't give up. Like, try. If it's available, choose it, like, don't give up completely,
I agree with you, yes. And, I feel like there's more and more options. Like, it's still very niche, but there's more and more options available, I feel.
You are lucky. In Tokyo, Tokyo has a lot of options. Hiroshima, outside Tokyo, it's still pretty hard. Yeah, like even Most Burger, they had a vegan burger. They just stopped it.
I saw that.
It was only trial. Oh man, bring it back, Most Burger. Bring it back. We need it. We need something all across Japan, right? Let's talk about COVID a little bit. You had to change what you were doing because of the COVID coronavirus. Do you want to talk about how you had to transition during that time?
So originally I was focusing on doing workshops. So I have an activity which is more individual expatriates, helping them through that. And the other activity is more focused on companies. So my plan was to do workshops with the different people involved, in sustainability in these companies and tackle a specific issue. But because of COVID, it's very tricky to do workshops these days. And I don't feel this would be a good format for online because I think the physical connection or interactions are quite important for the change to happen within the group, I feel. So I was saying, okay, what can I do during that time? So I started doing these webinars, and also I said, okay, you know what skills do I have actually? And this is my packaging skills. I thought, okay, I'm going to be out of packaging. I'm not going to use these skills anymore. And I was like, actually, maybe these skills could be useful to some companies who are maybe they don't really know how to get out of plastics. They don't know the options available. Sometimes, alternatives are not very clear in terms of, the material they use and the actual impact. So that's, how I'm now offering services to, let's say, more small and medium companies who want to go out of, plastic packaging and trying to minimize the packaging. So, yes.
Yeah, great. So having more online sessions, webinars. Here on screen, I'm showing your products on your website. So you offer individual coaching, reducing your waste and toxins in Japan, changing your habits and home care routine in Japan, moving to a clean personal care routine, and sustainable clothing habits in Japan, and sustainable diet. Do you want to choose one and introduce them, or?
Maybe I can explain. So these are like more focused for individuals. So the idea is like to tackle a specific theme. So one workshop, for example, let's take moving to a sustainable diet in Japan. So it's with a group of 10 to 20 people online. We all meet together. We understand our current frustrations. I'm sharing a couple of inspirations, like quite a few inspirations on, what are the issues that are related to your diet, whether it's, the use of pesticides, the carbon impact of, meat, for example, the overfishing issues. So I'm sharing different, facts and elements, and at the same time sharing inspiration of potential solutions. And so then the idea is for each individual to take some of these inspiration and choose 3 key actions they want to take forward. So they set themselves a SMART objective to really say, okay, this is what I'm, deciding to do in that time frame. This is very specific and timely. And then, they discuss, as a group, to two people to really inspire each other and maybe have more idea or solutions. And then they go away. And then I keep in touch with them for the next 2 weeks after the workshops to know, the difficulties they might encounter in the implementation of the solution. And the idea is like after the workshop, 2 weeks after the workshop, they have like new solutions implemented in their lifestyle. And then they can just take more inspiration from the workshop and continue the work on their own and progress on their journey. So that's the concept of the workshop.
Wow, great. I'm a big fan of coaching, to be honest. I did triathlon competitively in Japan when I was much younger, in my 20s. And I was doing well in races, not bad, top 10, but once I had a coach, once I had somebody I was accountable to, and she was online as well in America, she kept me going. She kept me on schedule, So I really think, even though you think, oh, I can find that information online, I think having a coach who knows you and is following up with you and communicating with you, I think that it keeps you honest, right?
Yeah, I agree. It's like having an accountability buddy. So yes. So if people prefer, I was saying that there's the workshop which is in groups, which is also good to have like maybe find a buddy you can stick to and keep in touch together. But also like if people are already quite advanced or they just want to focus on one specific topic, that's when you can just have like the 101 individual coaching session.
Yeah, wonderful. I think that sounds really interesting. So this is all available on Helene's website. So please have a look. You're also on Instagram. You have a good following on Instagram as well. You have a few Instagram pages, actually. Yes. We'll talk a bit about that later. Let's talk about your podcast series. That's really interesting. Green Change Makers.
Yes. So I started this project during the lockdown because originally I wanted my workshops to be physical. So I had found a place which was a Fab Cafe, and I was planning on launching that, and then COVID came, and I was like, okay, this is just a shame to just wait for it to go away, and let's try to do something together, And so I shared this project idea with Fab Cafe, and Kelsey was up for it. So we started this kind of webinar series. So every month we meet with a different, change maker in Japan on a topic that is related to, ecology. And we talk to them about, what was their, tipping point, what was their ecological transition, and then talk about their specific topic and project. So this month, for example, we are lucky to have Ian Shimizu from Wimori, who you had the chance to interview already.
Yes, I actually have interviewed 3 of your podcast people. John Walsh was in Seeking Sustainability 1. Robin Williams with, not Robin Lewis. Sorry, Robin Lewis of My Mizu for Seeking Sustainability 20. And recently, Ian Shimizu talking about We Mori. That was last week, right? Yeah, awesome.
Mm-hmm. So it's nice.
Number 54.
I think it's great to have and I really like your talk show, like showing what's happening in Japan. There's things going on in Japan, so it's great to showcase what people are doing.
I really support you. I really support anybody doing webinars or collaborations or talk shows, because once I started doing this and I keep reaching out to people like you, and asking, will you talk to me for an hour about sustainability? And everybody says yes. What are we on? Like 64 today? It's
Wow.
amazing. And so, of course, the more the merrier. The more people doing this, showing there is sustainability innovation in Japan.
Yes.
We are here, it's not the major businesses maybe are not talking about it, but they will be if we keep it up. So really wonderful.
I agree. Mm.
How was it doing the podcast? Was there some technical things you had to learn?
Actually, I really like the podcast format. So actually, before I did this podcast, I started one last year in French, which is called Voyageurs de Demain. Like in English, it would be Travelers of Tomorrow, which was interviews of travelers who are traveling differently. So, for example, not using the plane, traveling zero waste to try to change, the image we have of travel. So that's actually a project that came to me after my experience, through the Trans-Siberian. I wanted to educate myself on, how to travel better. And I think it's always, you learn so much, and I'm sure it's the same for you when you get, guests, you learn so much from their experience. And so that's why I decided to start this podcast on traveling. Actually, I'm launching the English one next month. So if you guys are
I saw that. I commented on that today. So you call the English one Eco Explorers, right?
Yes.
And then the French one, I'll let you say it.
Voyageurs de Demain.
Sounds beautiful. So if you're bilingual or trilingual like Helene, please have a look at her Instagram for the French travel focus for sustainable travel, or the English sustainable travel focus. That's a wonderful idea. I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah. In your tips to be plastic free, one of your tips was using eco wraps.
Mm-hmm.
We had Marissa Gelengser from Eco Hachi. She was in the series, but you introduced a different company that I didn't know about. It's called Ako.
This is I came across them when I went to one of the farmers market in Tokyo, near to United Nations University. And what I liked about their product, I didn't know about Eco Hachi before. And what I liked about their products was they also use organic fabric.
Mm-hmm.
So I was interested in that.
Yeah.
And if people also, there's a lot of, also the fact that beeswax, you are using, beeswax. There's also vegan options if people want to know about. So there's other options than just beeswax.
It's nice to have options, but if we are supporting the bees in Japan and they are buying the beeswax from local bee farmers who are taking care of the bees, I support local bee farmers because they are protecting the bees and helping pollinators. And it's a byproduct. Beeswax is a byproduct. So if you're thinking sustainably, it may be not vegan, but it is sustainable. It is helping our sustainable society. But all of this, you have to think about, like we said before, you have to think about it from many different directions.
Yes.
And then you have to choose for yourself, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, you have to.
What is important for you? What's your key driver? Is it the ethical elements, animal welfare? Is it like, there's so many things to choose from.
Yeah. So you just have to make the best choice you can for your situation, and we will try hard not to judge you for it. It's up to you. We support you.
Yeah. And one thing I would say, which is quite important, that I try to do when I share the information I do in my workshop, is you have to become your own detective. So like every information you see where people saying this is 100% natural, or this is biodegradable, this is whatever, like don't trust anyone and do your own research.
Yes.
Like, it takes time. And this is what I do, for example, when I look for information, because there's so many, wrong information. And sometimes even, natural products, if used in the wrong, let's say, quantities or whatever, can be, for example, harmful. So you have to be very, very careful when you're starting to go into that space as well.
Absolutely. I talked to Baye McNeil. He's an author, and he was telling me, as a journalist, you have to have 3 directions of information. And one is from a newspaper, one is from Google search, one is from somewhere else. And you try to triangulate onto the truth, right? So I think we have to do that as consumers.
Yes.
We have to say, oh, this looks like a good product. Is it a good product? Like, we have to be kind of skeptical, and then we have to do our research, and then you make a good choice. But then if you hear something later, you have to reassess and think, is it still a good choice? Is there a better choice? It's hard, but it's kind of fun too, right? To research.
Yes. I agree.
So you collaborate with Fab Cafe. Let's talk a little bit about Fab Cafe. Can you introduce your collaboration?
Yes. So the reason why I chose Fab Cafe is it's quite an interesting space, because it's a space where makers gather, and they have like a coffee space. They also have like machines, like I think it's lasering machine. They have different sorts of machines, so you can come there and try some stuff. And they are really promoting, the design and maker community. So that's what I liked in their philosophy. I can't say much more about them because I don't really work for them, but I'm really pleased to be working with them.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And it seems like a great hub of innovation. On the official Fab Cafe, it's not a Japanese idea, right? It comes from America or other countries, I think. But there's locations all around the world. Tokyo is one of them. And the originator was an MIT professor, so American. Where is that? It's a technology university, MIT, the most famous. And he started the first Fab Cafe, and it's kind of spread around the world. When I look at the Tokyo Fab Cafe, though, one thing that stands out to me and to you, if you look at it as a sustainability consultant, I think you need to suggest they stop using plastic straws.
I
please.
I agree. Yes.
It's wonderful that they're all about innovation and they're, encouraging entrepreneurship. That's fantastic. But think about maybe not plastic straws, maybe not. I know it's hard. It's hard now during coronavirus because there's so much more takeout, right?
But still, do you really need a straw?
Yeah. I had an interesting conversation with somebody the other day, and he's like, when did men start using straws? When I grew up, no self-respecting man would ever use a straw. Like, and people always say, well, does it make a difference? It's only a straw. But, so many straws adds up. And we do monthly cleanups at the river or beaches. We find straws. They're there. Every other kind of plastic is there too, but we do find straws. So if you don't need a straw, just no thank you.
Yes, I agree.
Also, Global Goals Jam is also a collaborator. Can you tell us about them a little bit?
So it's, I believe, and I hope I'm not saying something wrong, Kelsey, sorry. So it's something that Fab Cafe Tokyo is organizing, around the SDG goals. And it's every year, and they tackle like specific elements, and then they do almost like co-working session with different people from different backgrounds trying to come up with solutions. And actually, if you're interested, they have like a talk coming up tomorrow for Uminohi. And they also have like a mini jam session, online mini jam session on Thursday. So I'm sure it will be super interesting.
Yeah, so have a look at the Global Goals Jam website, and then you can see the Tokyo events that you're talking about. But of course, because it's coronavirus, it's not only Tokyo, it's online, so you can access it from everywhere. According to the main Global Goals Jam website, the idea is to focus on innovation, presentations, collaboration for 3 days before the climate conference by the United Nations. So it's in September is the main event, 3-day event.
Yes.
And looking at last year's Tokyo Global Goals Jam event, I see Joanna Arai, who is one of the speakers in the series as well. So it's nice to see a familiar face, and hopefully 2020 it'll be online maybe, so you have a bigger variety of people, but maybe in person by September. We don't really know.
Yeah,
we
it's
don't
difficult
know.
to tell. Huh?
Yeah, but the website says there's 4 goal themes in 95 cities, 5,000 jammers over 3 days. So that's like the main focus. So that's very exciting. And if you're interested, you can sign up to host your own Global Jam during the September time. You can sign up and host it yourself from anywhere in Japan. I saw there's one place in Japan which is already registered for a 2020 September event. Can you guess what city?
Fukuoka?
Oh my God, what? Did you know? That is the answer.
Very good innovation in Fukuoka. I think the startup scene is very, like, they have a lot of things happening in Fukuoka.
Wow, good for you. I was thinking Tokyo, but then when I saw Fukuoka, I'm like, yes, not Tokyo for once. Nice. So now on screen, I'm showing the page where you can sign up your local area. Hopefully by September, we'll be able to have more events. Maybe outside would be a better idea since social distancing. You have to be innovative, I think.
Yes.
One of the things from last year's event, which I thought was really interesting, is they were talking about design waste. So they said there's so many great ideas, but a lot of the ideas are not used. So if somebody can think of a way to document all the ideas and share all the ideas, and then those ideas maybe can get traction or get active in some other area or with some other person. Isn't that amazing with ideas, right? Is sometimes you'll say something or I'll say something and somebody listening will think, oh, I just thought of a new idea because of that, right?
Yes.
So that's why
the power of collective brain.
Yes. So that's why your podcast, this series, all of these webinars and seminars, it's so good to have a variety of ideas out there. Variety. No idea is stupid, right? Every idea could spark something, right?
I agree.
There was one idea, so they're trying to create like a new actionable idea for sustainability. And one idea from the Tokyo session last time, it looks like to take your own container to the shop and ask the shopkeeper to fill up in your container. And that's still very hard to do in Japan, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I found, like, from my personal experience, that works when you go to your local stores, like if you go to the fishmonger, if you go to the tofuya, if you go to the misoya, like usually local small businesses, maybe they are a bit, startled by what you're asking, but usually they do that.
Yeah. Have you tried with tofu or something? You're so lucky.
Yes. I tried.
Yeah.
I'm lucky to be living in Shitamachi in Tokyo, which is a very old area of Tokyo, and there's still, these like old businesses and small like grannies and oji-san, and you have rice. You can buy rice by the bulk. There's also green grocers with less plastic. Well, these are not always organic, so I kind of order my vegetables rather. But yeah, there's many options.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Do you talk about the SDGs in your consulting or in your coaching at all?
I don't, to be honest, like I don't really talk about them. Like I focus more on practicality of things. I think they are still in the background. Obviously, I think the SDGs are like universal. But I didn't choose to advertise them. Maybe I should actually add them on my website, because I've noticed coming from Europe, I feel like they are not so much advertised or pushed forward. But I feel in Japan, actually, it's something that people relate a lot to. So I should probably maybe start, showcasing them on my website.
Yeah, I think it's not a bad idea because there is a buzz around SDGs in Japan, and it's kind of hard to think about how to do it, And as a coach, as a sustainability consultant, if you can think of ways that you can connect the advice that you're giving the company or the individual, and you can connect it to an SDG, I think that it makes it, especially for business people, it makes it something to talk about, like a talking point in the meetings, because you'll notice around Japan now, a lot of people have the badge, the SDG badges, right? And
Yes.
and then when you ask them, oh, what is your company trying to do? And they're like, I don't know. Like there's so much, right? But then if you look like the Global Goals Jam, their idea is to make it more easy to think of a way to do it, right? So nature and climate change, those are two of the main ones, right? So how can you reduce your impact in your business? So like what you do, change your packaging a little bit. Choose a different source material, or reuse the package after, or find a way to make it reusable in some other way. Like somebody was talking about putting seeds in the business card, right? So that's a design thing, but it's also to make another use for it after your business card is finished, right? Or
Yes.
Ian Shimizu, I think he was talking about making the posters for the forest, and inside there's seeds in the
Yes.
poster, right?
Yes.
So, there's a lot of great ideas, creativity, innovation, and SDGs. It really goes nicely together. So that would be my advice. Add a
Thank you.
SDG section, and think about how your ideas connect to
Yeah,
specific SDGs. Yeah.
I think that's a really good advice. Thank you.
You're doing so much, It's really, it's hard to keep everything balanced or everything in focus. Like how do you prioritize what you do, right? How every time you wake up and you think, I have to go to work, right? Even at home, I have to go to work. What do you do first? How do you make a plan, like a priority? What do you do first?
Yeah, you have to know, because I'm very specific in a way that even when I was working in my previous job, I was always having like side projects. So I have this particularity. I can't just do one thing, which is might not be a good thing actually, but and so maybe you go a bit slower in the sense. So I might not recommend for people to follow my advice because I'm interested in many things. I'm quite curious, so I tend to explore many things, and sometimes some projects drop, but some others like follow on. So the way I do usually is I usually think about, what's my long-term goal is. And then I look at, I think everybody does that, but tiny steps. And, every week, I'm thinking, okay, what do I want to achieve this week? And then actually the day before, like the evening before I go to bed, I say, okay, what do I want to achieve tomorrow? And that kind of frees my mind as well before I go to sleep. Maybe my brain is also thinking, while I'm sleeping. And then the next day I'm trying to tackle these goals during the day. Sometimes, I might not be able to achieve all of them, but I have this focus. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's great. One of the best pieces of advice I was given when I started working for myself at home is to make chunks of time and have breaks and to vary your input. So you're everybody is very focused on what you have to do, but try to have different breaks in the day where you talk to people who is not connected to your work, or you read a book that's not connected to what you have to do, because your more various, diverse input in your brain actually helps you relax and process the information you have to do a bit better. If you only focus on one type of information, your mind gets kind of burnt out. I think you were saying as well, right? You get a bit tired of the same topic.
Yes. I think that's a really good piece of advice. And sometimes when you start working for yourself, you don't always, especially in time of Corona, when, social interactions are limited, you don't always take the time to just ask for a random coffee or have lunch with someone. And I think these times are very important, like you said, because there's their time of creativity as well, meeting new people. And, this might trigger, like you said, some new ideas, actually.
Yeah, and get out for walks and go into an outdoor space with nature where you can see nature and do some stretching or meditation or something. Yeah.
Yes.
It's all good for your mind and body, and that's so important with your advice as well. So when we are consultants, we give advice. We also have to practice what we preach, right? It's so important.
Completely.
Well, we have a few more minutes. Is there anything you'd like to introduce for the last few minutes? We talked about a lot.
Yeah, I think we covered quite a lot. Don't hesitate to just reach out, if you want to go grab a coffee or just have just a chat. I'm very happy to meet anyone because I arrived in Japan, not so long ago. And so I would love to meet new people and to chat together, hear about your projects as well, if you have a project in that space. And also if you're an eco-traveler, so someone who is conscious about their impact, when they travel, or maybe have changed their ways of traveling from, maybe going everywhere by plane to traveling more locally, don't hesitate to reach out because I would love to talk to you in my podcast. And
wonderful.
Joy, I think we have to talk about that together. As well.
That'd be great. I would love to join. I traveled all around Asia and Europe for almost 2 years.
Wow.
And we had great experiences. I'd love to share. Yeah. Of course, more recently, a stronger focus on sustainability. But I think those 2 years definitely shaped me in how I see sustainable travel and how I recommend destinations should try to get the right kind of traveler. So the way that you market your product or service or destination should get you a good traveler that respects your place, that wants to spend time in your place. I know that you're a big advocate of slow travel.
Yes.
So important, right? Slow travel. I want to spend time there. I want to talk to local people, right?
Yes, exactly. The idea of travel is not just about consuming a place, And this is, I think, the problem with social media recently. Like, it's becoming like that. Yeah, you want to go there to take that picture, tick this box. You know, there's lots of this bucket list. And we need to change that mindset and really just say, okay, what do you want out of traveling? You know, what are you looking for? And are you trying to run away from a life you're not satisfied of? You know, or are you really, you know, just open to new discoveries, new encounters with people? So this is like the shift we have to make, you know, with regards to traveling. I'm not saying don't travel anymore. That's not what I'm saying, but travel more consciously. And when you do travel, think about your impact, you know, in terms of the transportation you're taking, you know, the wastes, also, you know, what services you're looking for and the impact you're using, sorry, and the impact they have on local people or local ecosystems as well. So yes.
Yeah, definitely. Very important. Thank you so
Uh,
much
Thank
for
you.
joining today and for sharing all your insights, and really good luck with everything that you're doing. And please
Thank
keep
you.
up the good work. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you,
Bye,
everybody, for
Elena.
joining. Join us again tomorrow at 5 p.m. Have a good day, everyone.